Hello and welcome to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Thanks for joining us. Grass is an essential and low-cost feed source, and no matter what part of the country you call home, if you have cattle, the value of improving your forage is absolutely clear. Those producers who manage their forage resources well also maximize their profit potential. Today, we're talking with a group of experts on ways to improve the use of forage in a cattle operation. And Damon, let's start with a very basic question, and that is, why should we even worry about controlling weeds in the first place?
Well, it really comes down to the one simple answer of you're maximizing your forages. And, as we travel across the country and our local experts talk to ranchers, pastures are in a lot of different situations. So you may be reclaiming a pasture, you may have a very well managed pasture where you're treating annual weeds. But at the end of the day, it comes down to maximizing the grass that you're growing in either one of those situations. So if your pastures are in great shape, those annual weeds are really the first step to a larger decline. So it's important, whether you're reclaiming or an annual treatment, to make sure that you're managing it well.
Kevin said something earlier in the show about really cattle ranchers are grass farmers first. And why do you believe it's so important to think of pasture-based beef production more as a crop operation?
Well, I think it's a very insightful comment from somebody that's doing a great job, and we can see that here. At the end of the day, I think someone that's raising cattle, managing pasture, is doing the same thing that a crop producer is doing. And very rarely do you hear a crop producer that is skipping soil sampling, not fertilizing, not putting a herbicide on. And they're doing that because they're maximizing their grain production, their oilseed production off an acre. And when you think about what a rancher's doing with their pasture, at the core, they're doing the same thing, and they need to manage some of those same variables and aspects on the land.
So Scott, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of losses producers can experience when they don't control weeds properly?
So yeah, we lose forage production in several ways because of weed pressure. One is just competition for resources, and what we found at the simplest level, it's usually a minimum of a pound, but more often than not it goes well over a pound of forage lost for every pound of weeds we allow to remain in our field. The other way we tend to lose production is through the number of acres that we have that are grazable. We have certain weeds out there that create kind of a no grazing zone around and under them, and they tend to repulse animals from those areas, and so we end up putting more pressure on our better parts of our field, which in turn turns them into weedy parts later on in the season or even in the next year. And then the other way we tend to lose forage from weed production is through mowing. We have producers that'll mow 2, maybe 3 times a season to keep weeds under control. And what we have to remember is every time we remove an inch of forage, we may be removing anywhere from 100 to 400 pounds of forage from that pasture. So we're removing grazable forage.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you, Damon, why don't we just mow weeds when we have an issue in particular places? Why is that a bad idea?
Well, I think Scott did a great job of talking about what we actually lose. So I think it's very easy for a producer to look out, they see the tractor in the barn, they see some weeds. It seems like a very good management technique, but you do have the forage loss. Plus, when you look at the actual cost of operating that machine and time, as well as the machine and labor, oftentimes it's the same amount as a herbicide application. And I think the long-term benefits of a good herbicide application can actually extend beyond just that single year.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk, Scott, about what are the benefits of producers being able to manage things well and actually grow more forage.
We recently did a survey with the American Forage and Grassland Council, where we surveyed the members. And we asked them, what are the practices, the forage-based practices that tend to be the best return on investment? And the one that floated to the top was extending the grazing season. And I think that's one thing you have to remember when we're implementing a good weed control program. If we're shifting those resources back to the forage base in that field and we're increasing our forage production, we're going to start shaving off those days that we're feeding hay. And what we're looking at is somewhere around $1 a head per day that we can save for every day that we graze and we don't have to feed hay. So that's probably one of the biggest benefits is just extending that grazing season. And then we have those folks that just want to increase their carrying capacity. I tell producers this all the time: the cheapest acre of pasture that you'll ever buy will be the acre that you regain once you implement a good weed control program. So those people that are looking for more acres, sometimes they need to look internally because they can increase their herd size on their own property.
Without buying any more land.
Without buying any more land.
Well, let's talk to the guys that make their living at this, Mike and Kevin. I mean, what does an ample forage supply mean to you, Mike?
Going into stockpiling for winter forage, carrying capacity is another big option. You know, we can look at if we have ample forage, our stocking rates, put more pounds of beef per acre is going to put more dollars in our pocket. So that's a really big factor for us as far as going through the winter. You know, a lot of times we can supplement with some protein, make them utilize that forage there to where we're not actually having to take everything to them. So, you know, cuts back on the labor aspect of that. And also, I mean, it utilizes your pastures and the land that you have available.
Kevin, what are the benefits of having ample forage in your operation?
You know, I think the cattle depend on us to have a very complete diet, and we like to do that with forage. And it's always a goal of ours to have something grazable for our cattle every day of the year. It might not always be something lush and green such as this, but it could be through stockpile forages. So I think extending the grazing season is a wonderful opportunity. A higher carrying capacity, if it fits our operation, is also opportunity. So it all starts with what we provide, and it's kind of like we can get back out of it what we put in it.
Mm-hmm. And so one last question to you both. What are the kinds of things that good forage allow you to do from a management and decision-making process? I mean, what options does it give you? What benefits do you get from having the luxury of having some options from a forage standpoint?
Back to, again, you know, carrying capacity, that's a big option for us. You know, we have to make a decision on are we going to bring more cattle in if we have ample forage. If we don't have the moisture and don't have that forage available to us, then we've got to make that management decision at that point in time. Supplementation of our winter needs, that's a big determining factor. Same way there, you know, if you have plenty, it's going to make a management decision in order to feed a protein supplement to make them utilize it. Whereas if we don't have that, then we're going to have to supplement them a little bit more. So,
anything you would add, Kevin?
You know, I think we have to look at the economic characteristics. Carrying more cattle on a given acre. We all sell pounds, so pounds of beef produced per acre. And then we can never forget about reproduction, you know, or what's the breed up on these females. And we found that a high quality forage can certainly help with that.
Well, thank you guys for your insight. There's no doubt about it that we are first and foremost grass farmers, and we just tend to harvest this grass with those beasts as opposed to the tractors that other farmers use to harvest their crops. Now remember, if you'd like more information about any of these discussion topics today, you can visit the website rangeandpasture.com.